Welcome to Scenario 1 of the SLAB SAVERS program. I'm Jessica Quinalty, captain in Southern California. And we're going to be looking at this first incident here at the Super 8 motel. And it's actually kind of odd that we actually chose this as our first simulation, because it's not just that basic house fire that you would assume that would be the first scenario we would start off with. And it's also, in particular, we chose this one to kind of see how you can take that SLAB SAVERS concept and utilize it very easily for a small scale to a large scale fire. And even so, if you look at the SAVERS concept, if you've seen that before, this fire is actually going to be run with divisions as opposed to SAVERS in the groups. So we're actually going to talk about how that actually works. But before we get into the SAVERS aspect of SLAB SAVERS, we need to talk about the slab, because that's the important piece of your strategy. Before you get to tactics, we have to discuss some of the safety concerns or some of the profiling that we do on these incidents. So let's actually take this one down and break it down with the slab here, your safety profile, your life profile, your air track, and your building. And remember, each one of those gets a red light, yellow light, or green light, depending on the severity of the hazard. And if you can mitigate or trap, isolate that hazard, then it may be a yellow. I know it looks orange here just because it's hard to see yellow in that marker board, but it could. Orange is a great color because it actually kind of gets closer to that red thing, so it's not a bad color to see here. But either way, you're going to take that traffic signal kind of concept and figure out, am I offensive, am I defensive? And many times it's pretty amazing that as you continue to do this, you're going to see actually very few fires that are going to be all green across all four of the profiles. And it doesn't mean that every single fire is going to be defensive. There's certain things that need to be looked at, certain things that need to be done, just to make sure that you're safe and that we can be all greens. And it may be, again, through isolating or mitigating certain issues. So if we actually take this first fire and we break it down with the slab here, safety concerns on this incident, and this seems like a pretty basic fire, maybe not a lot going on, but certain things I'm going to look at. So with the safety profile, for me the first one that stands out is this overhang, and it actually has a certain number of feet for the clearance for you to drive underneath that. And if you don't know that going into it, you could end up having fire engines in a very bad spot. And maybe your engine company may be able to fit under here, but your truck company might not be able to. So that's going to obviously affect your tactics, and it could affect your safety. This may lead to, on this fire, if the apparatus can't drive underneath that overhang, then they're all going to have to park on the street. It's going to become a deep stretch operation with your hose, or 2.5 to bundles, whatever you want to call it. But that is going to be a key to actually understand that in your safety profile. So that's the first one that stands out for me here. The life profile, this is a high occupancy type of building. There's a lot of people that actually could be staying here at any given moment. So high occupancy is the first one you're going to look at. Luckily, these rooms are usually very small. They have a lot of ways to actually get out or exit the building if it's on fire. And they may or may not have windows in the rear of the motel rooms. And if it's obviously on an upper floor, they may not be able to escape out of there. So getting ladders to those upper floors, if possible, for that escape route for those people affected in those rooms goes hand in hand with your life profile and your tactics. The other concern with your life profile in this incident is that there may be odd sleeping hours. The motels and the hotels, you may have contractors that are sleeping at different times, sleeping during the day to work at night, that are staying at the hotel type of thing. Or you may have just people that have odd sleeping habits just because of the way that they actually have their lifestyle that comes along with some of these establishments. So that is obviously going to come into play with my life profile, keeping that in mind, that that 2 o'clock in the morning fire versus 2 o'clock in the afternoon fire, we're usually going to look a little harder at the life profile at 2 o'clock in the morning for a normal residential house or apartment complex, but we need to continue to keep looking at, hey, they may be sleeping in this type of environment. Next, we're going to look at the air track. And the air track, the first thing on the air track with this incident is actually, where is that smoke showing from? Is that a first floor fire or is that a second floor fire? And unfortunately, from this point of view, it's very hard to tell, but that's going to come into play with your 360. That's where the slab is actually ingrained or embedded into your 360, so that works out great. But that's the first thing I want to know. Once I figure out where that smoke is coming from, then I can determine that into my tactics as well, if it's on the first floor or the second floor, Division 1 or Division 2. The other opportunity I have, even from this vantage point, is I can start looking at my smoke. From Dave Dodson's reading smoke program, I have my VVDC, or volume, velocity, density, and color. So from this one I can actually describe that smoke. The volume, it looks like it's a moderate volume of smoke for this incident. It's pressurized. It seems to be lifting, but it can be, it looks a little dense, and the color is obviously black or a very dark gray. So I probably have a working fire. I mean, it's definitely going to be a working fire. It's going to be IDLH, or immediately dangerous life and health type of atmosphere. And from that, it's going to go directly into my, my savers and my slab. The other component I'm going to look at is, with that, I'm going to look at the flow path. And in these small motel rooms, that flow path may be very easy to mitigate through the use of a rear window. But I want to make sure that I might have unidirectional versus bidirectional flow and control that flow path on this incident. So that's my air track there. And then last but not least, on my building profile. My building profile for this type of incident, some of the things that come along safety-wise for the building, is this overhang. Whether it's on the first floor or the second floor walkways, that can actually be a very critical piece. If you have a fire on the first floor and it is actually coming out of those front doors or front windows with a lot of velocity, and you actually have high heat or fire coming out of there, it can weaken or actually have problems with the stairwell or the second floor above for those occupants or firefighters above there. If the fire is on the second floor, it can be impinging on the mansard and the roof area. And it's very common in these types of establishment for it to get established in that fake mansard area above the walkway and start running through there. And the truck company and the crews from below are going to be pulling space in that small little attic space to get ahead of it. But the big thing about that in the safety profile is, if it starts getting in there and becomes established, this mansard can actually fall down on top of crews working. And unfortunately, we've seen that on several motel fires, including there was a large one in Phoenix, Arizona, where that mansard fell down on top of the crew while they were. So that's some of the key pieces of the slab for this. You may have others that you're seeing from your perspective. But the big thing about it is again, I'm not giving you what colors I believe they are. Those are decisions that you personally need to make and your department needs to look at. And it's also going to be based on your staffing level, what your comfort level is, how many resources you can get to a scene with a first or second alarm. So that's going to come directly into your slab. With your savers, you go into the component of your savers, and that's going to be a huge thing. Once you determine your strategy, then you can break each one of these down into the tactics. Okay, so for this Super 8 motel fire, let's actually talk about that savers. And remember, in your tactics of savers, your search, attack, ventilation, extension or exposures, depending on if it's internal or external, extension being internal and exposures being external, your rapid intervention crew, and your salvage. And in a normal savers concept, and again, that's why it's actually, when we chose this simulation, it actually kind of goes away from our normal savers concept, but I'll show you exactly how it still works just fine. So in a normal savers fire, you're looking at actually dropping in resources in these from the task level and building them up to the tactical level where they actually become groups. Let's say that your first arriving engine is actually going to set up for fire attack. So engine 1 actually comes in here, sets up for fire attack, starts doing some transitional, and they go that route. Your next engine is actually going to come in. They're going to assume the 2 out, and also they're going to set up the incident command system. So engine 2 assumes command. Engine 1 actually now has a 2 out, so they're able to go interior and start getting some work done. This engine, remember that captain is at the task level, so they still can be called engine 1. If you want to call them fire attack group already, that's okay. But normally I would prefer that next in engine to this fire attack area actually becomes your fire attack group. That captain will be at the tactical level versus the task level, and it's probably going to make it a lot better for situational awareness and a lot easier on you in radio communications. You'd be amazed how many times when you actually do this, you get better radio comms to the incident commander by not having that first in captain that is task saturated trying to answer the radio. Obviously the truck's going to go to the roof, or depending on what's going on, they may be doing something else, but they're going to be doing some type of ventilation. And eventually what's going to occur, the battalion chief may get on scene and assume command, and let's say engine 3 comes in and they assume RIC, they assume the rapid intervention crew. So me personally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take engine 2's crew, those 2 people that were doing the 2 out, that maybe the captain that was the incident commander and the firefighter, or the engineer and the firefighter, if the engineer from engine 1's pumping, and I'm going to transition engine 2 directly into search. In the SAVERS concept, the big thing we talk about is getting a primary search done earlier, faster, and the best way to do that is actually get that first in, 2 out to get right inside there. They should already be ready to go inside because they're in a 2 out fashion, almost in an on-deck model, and now they're ready to deploy into doing a search. Now these 2 individuals could still be reporting to fire attack. We don't want to make sure that we understand that they may be reporting to fire attack, but their primary function is getting a good primary search completed. Now whether they go under the S for you to manage that or the attack component depends on the scale of the incident and span of control, and we'll talk about how that works. So, but either way, as we expand on this, let's say engine 5 comes in and they actually assume fire attack group. I'm just going to circle engine 5 that they're actually assuming the group, so I know who is reporting directly to me. Engine 5, fire attack group. You're going to be assuming fire attack group. You have engine 1 and engine 2 conducting a primary search and fire attack, initiating those types of tasks. And you can build on there all the way across. Salvage, those types of things. So like we discussed on this incident, this is actually going to be set up with divisions. You're going to have a division 1 and division 2. So how does that fit in with the attack group or the search group? Again, this would become divisions very easily. What's going on if this fire is on the 2nd floor? All your fire attack problem is actually on division 2, as well as your search. I can cross out the A, I can actually put the 2 underneath it, but whatever's going under this column, I'm just going to call this division 2 resources. Obviously, if you look at division 1, the primary function or task that's going on there is probably salvage. I'm going to make this the 1, circle that, so I know division 1 is basically the salvage component. Now there may be some other things that they're doing there. They're checking for extension, they're doing evacuation, which may fall under the search concept. But still, I'm just going to put division 1 and I'm going to plug in whatever resources underneath the division 1 under the S and make it easy for me. If I'm using a tactical worksheet, I can cross those out, make those adjustments. If you're using tablet command, it's very easy just to change those groups to divisions, move the columns, and do whatever you want to do. If you are using tablet command, remember that whoever assumes that group, you just actually hold it down on that button, change it to the supervisor, and it's automatically going to put them at the top, which is going to make it very easy for your tracking. But that's division 2, division 1. Now going into, let's make this a little harder and understand where, when we talked about if you have a search and attack separate because of span of control, we'll give you an example of that. So let's make this a little bit harder. Let's say that this motel is still 2 stories, but it is a center hallway complex. Or maybe even it's an apartment complex or an assisted living. And senior complex or an assisted living where all of your occupants are going to be immobile or very slow to get out of the structure. And you actually need to get a good, effective primary search done and rescues possibly. But your fire attack problem, especially because it's going to be a center hallway, may be completely overloaded with resources because of the fire attack and the extension problem. So this Division 2 supervisor may have 4 or 5 resources plugged into just the fire attack problem alone, and then you may have several resources that actually become a search group. So let's say Engine 8 is the search group supervisor, but they're working on Division 2. Remember in ICS that a group and a division is still the same level of ICS, so they may be working on Division 2, but they're not reporting directly to Division 2. Obviously they're going to be coordinating back and forth, but both the fire attack or Division 2 supervisor and the search group supervisor are going to be reporting directly to the incident commander or to operations, depending on the level of scale of ICS. So this is actually how you build. Like I said, you take this fire from the task level to the tactical level. Very simple to do with the SAVERS concept or with divisions. And so that's our first simulation for the SLAB SAVERS concept, and look forward to seeing you in scenario 2. Thank you.